someone I'm proud to call a friend, Governor Mitt Romney.
Got some notes here. I don't know if I got a chance to look at it, but I had a few things I wanted to say this morning. But first, thanks to Al Carter. What a terrific leader. Florida's lucky to have a man like Al Carter to lead this effort. Al, thank you. I see David and Al's family is here too, and appreciate your work. Congratulations, by the way, to the legislators and leadership, the governor and leadership of Florida. You have in this state men and women who have decided that you're going to balance the budget, not raise taxes, turn down federal money that has heavy strings attached to it. And by doing so, by the way, you had your evaluation by the rating agencies upgraded. The outlook for Florida upgraded. At the time the nation was downgraded, Florida was upgraded. Congratulations to that courage. That's good for the people here in Florida. Now I thought this morning I'd talk a bit about what it's like going from the business world into government. What's similar and what's different. And I ask all the time, is it harder being in government than it is being in business? And I'm sure you presume it is. No. It's harder doing what you do in the private sector than it is being in government. Because what you do, if you make a mistake, if you make a serious mistake in your job, you might lose your job. Then you might end up losing your house. If you run an enterprise that employs other people, you could lose all their jobs. And the bank's money and your investors' money. It's very unforgiving in your enterprises. In government, the 4 years I spent there, I was surprised. When some people messed up, they just blamed the opposition party. That's what you're seeing in Washington today. You're seeing a president who doesn't know how to govern, who doesn't know how to lead, who doesn't know how to balance a balance sheet, but he sure knows how to campaign and blame. And we need a president that knows how to lead. Now, I found some other differences between the private sector and business world and government. One is the use of data. In the real world, in the private sector, you look at numbers and try and figure out how those numbers inform what you're going to do. In government, they have tons and tons of data. I mean, they produce mounds of information and data. They just don't look at it. I mean, I came into office, they said the best thing you can do to improve your schools is to reduce the classroom size. And I said, well, has anyone ever looked to see if the data supports that? And they looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. We had 351 different cities and towns in Massachusetts. We test our kids every year to see how they're doing. So I could find out for every one of our school districts their average classroom size and how well their average child was doing. And so I plotted the one versus the other, classroom size against student performance. And guess what? There was no relationship at all. As a matter of fact, the district that had the smallest classrooms and spent the most money per pupil, Cambridge, Massachusetts, scored at the bottom 10% of how the kids were doing. So the data is used in the private sector. By the way, what was the answer to improving schools? School choice. Recruiting the best teachers in the world. Making sure that we evaluated how our kids were doing. And we also put in place something called the John Abigail Adams Scholarship Program. If you take our graduation exam and pass it, and you pass it in the top quarter of those that take the exam, you're entitled to 4 years tuition free at our state university. And by the way, you've got to be a legal resident of the United States of America. Other differences. There's competition that goes on in the real world, in the business world. A lot of people in government don't understand that. They don't understand, for instance, that right now we are in a pitched competitive battle with other nations around the world. Of course we trade with other nations. We're the most productive and inventive nation in the world. And so we must trade to have a strong economy and to have the highest incomes in the world. Trade is a good thing for us. But don't forget, we're in competition. And so when politicians work together to put trade agreements in place, they have to understand that we have to make those agreements work for us, not just for the other guy. particular with China. You may have noticed. And China isn't playing by the rules. Now, a lot of people would cheat if they could get away with it. And we've been letting them get away with it for over a decade. They manipulate their currency. You might think, well, what does that mean? What it means is this. They make their currency seem like it's worth much less than it actually is by pegging it to the dollar at a very low level. And as a result, their products sell at about 30% lower than they would if they were fairly marketed. And as a result of that, our businesses have a hard time competing. It's time for us to recognize cheaters for what they are. On my first day in office, I will issue an executive order identifying China as a currency manipulator and allowing us to apply tariffs on their goods where they're cheating and killing American jobs. There's another difference between government and the private sector. People in government don't tend to understand the power of incentives. They think, for instance, if you raise taxes a whole lot, it won't make any difference in the way people behave. They just calculate they'll keep doing what they did in the past, and then they add up the new numbers they think government's going to get. It doesn't work that way. I remember, I was looking at the budget in our state. There was a line there for homeless shelters, and I said, what's this sub-account here for hotels under homeless shelters? They said, oh, Governor, you have to understand. If someone comes to a homeless shelter and we're full, we tell them go to a hotel and we'll pick up the bill. I said, I bet the word gets around, you know? So I changed the incentive. I told them immediately put in place this new rule, which if someone comes to a homeless shelter and it's full, you tell them you'll make room. And the person who's been there the longest, 3, 4, 5 months, they get to go to the hotel. Now, before that change in incentive went in place, guess how many rooms a night we were renting in Massachusetts? 599 rooms a night on average. In the tens of millions of dollars it cost. After we changed that incentive, you know how many rooms we rent a night? 0. 0. Incentives make a difference. Now, I hope the folks that care about immigration understand that power as well. I love legal immigration. This is a land of opportunity and freedom. I want people all over the world to come to this country legally. There are 4.7 million people in line hoping to come here legally. I want the best and the brightest and the freedom lovers of the world to get in line and to ultimately become legal residents of the United States of America. But for that to happen, we have to stop illegal immigration. Because illegal immigration is an enemy of legal immigration. I was at the border in San Diego with Border Patrol agents, big fences there. They said about 100 people are able to get through even with the fences there. And I said, what do we have to do? They said, well, number one, you got to have a fence. You can't have places that are just open. And there were places even in San Diego where people could virtually walk through without even having to go by a fence, over a fence. Number one, you got to have a fence. You got to have enough Border Patrol agents to patrol it. Number two, they said, you have to have this country turn off the magnet. I said, what do you mean the magnet? And he said, you're drawing people in here with employers that hire folks that are here, that hire illegals. You're drawing people in to get benefits in this country they can't get in their home country. And so the things that you have to do, for instance, is you have to have an e-verify system or something like that that identifies who's here legally and then crack down on employers that hire illegals. And you heard us last night in that debate. One of the things I still can't get over is the idea that a state would decide to give a $100,000 discount to illegals to go to school in their state. It is simply wrong to create that kind of magnet. It cannot be sustained. My friend Governor I will